Welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, and we're back here to talk more Nebraska football news. We got a bunch of things happening with Kyle McCord, with Dylan Raiola, Daniel Kalen. So we're going to get to that in just a second. Before we do, please make sure, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you like and share our content. We definitely appreciate that. So yeah, Danny, what in the hell happened with Kyle McCord yesterday? Everything was trending, the crystal balls, the expert predictions. Everybody said he was coming, and then all of a sudden, Kyle McCord drops the hammer and said he's moving on from Nebraska and considering other schools. What's your takeaway from this?
That Dylan Raiola is a silent commitment, and that they want Raiola to be the starter. I mean, that's the only thing that I could see as being, the reason why he decommitted. Because, truth be told, as good as it sounded, having two five-star quarterbacks in the quarterback room with one sitting, I mean, there could have been some problems there. Like I could see where that would be, tough to work out. But in any event, now I just hope that Rayola commits, signs the letter of intent, and you know, quite honestly, is ready to play in August. Because the way the quarterback room looks right now, I mean, we need to lock up the Rayola commitment at the very least.
Yeah, it's interesting how it all went down. Like I said, the crystal balls. I mean, they usually put those things in for a reason. They're not just quite guessing. But I don't know if it's a matter of, maybe there's just not enough NIL money for both of these guys. Because yeah, I mean, Matt Rule is pretty much right. Whether it's a high school quarterback or a transfer portal quarterback, I mean, the NIL money is still about the same. So that potentially could have factored into it. And Pete Nakos from On Three, he did a show last night a little before McCord, announced that, and he said one of the driving factors behind him entering the portal was NIL. And he wanted to basically be guaranteed a starting job, which, I mean, I just don't see Matt Rule doing that. I don't see him, especially with, and how do you do that with Dylan Raiola? I mean, if Dylan Raiola comes in there and lights it up and plays, amazing. I mean, you have to give him the job. So, I mean, you can't sit there and say, well, regardless of what happens, you're going to start next year, Kyle. I mean, I think it probably was like, yeah, there's going to be a competition. And if you win, you'll be the starter. If not, that's how it is. So, I mean, and I'm not sure if that's what happened, but that could be just some of the thought process. That's for Kyle McCord, he could go somewhere else where there's not a Dylan Raiola there. And plus, the other thing too is if he happens to struggle, then people are obviously the pressure is going to ramp up for Dylan Raiola to get into the game. So those are a few things that I could see kind of pushing
Good
him in this
points.
direction. But yeah, it's still a bummer, because it would have been ideally, like we said, the ideal situation. McCord plays for a year, Raiola sits, plays maybe 4 games and starts next season. That all sounds nice and good, but it doesn't. Things don't always work out that way. So I'm interested to see where Kyle McCord goes now. I had heard Syracuse, Rutgers, Pittsburgh, definitely probably in the mix since he's from Pennsylvania, and I know they need a quarterback, but man, it's like I mean, at least with Nebraska, you have the tradition and it feels like you still feel like you're at a big program. Like, where's this guy gonna go unless it's like Miami or somewhere that's not gonna be like a major drop off from Ohio State.
And Miami was taking Cam Ward out to a nice restaurant on Tuesday, as we saw online. And so I don't know if Miami is going to, leave without securing Cam Ward. But anyway, um, I think when you play with, the big boys and you recruit high level prospects, this is one of the things that you have to deal with. And I think we're seeing Matt Rule recruit at a level where, quite frankly, we haven't seen in quite some time. And I would rather, have this happen than to have us not try at all. I know it stings when we don't land some of these high level guys, but at least we're trying. And I know that's not, the news that people want to hear, but keep in mind Dylan Raiola felt kind of snubbed by Nebraska early in his recruitment process because one of our former head coaches couldn't even show up for a meeting. Now we're talking about, okay, let's hope we land Dylan Raiola on this visit because he could potentially be our starting quarterback, right? So I mean, in that respect, I think we've come a long way.
Yeah. So what does I guess that's the big question moving forward. With Kyle McCord, it's a bummer, but no use in crying about
Yeah.
spilt milk. It's gone now. He's done. He's not coming here. So what does it mean for Dylan Raiola? And I guess to me, it means that Nebraska has to get him. They have
Yeah.
to 100%. But everything does feel like it's trending in that direction. There's all the three Husker guys at 24/7, the three Husker guys at On Three, Steve Wiltfong, Chad Simmons, Kip Adams, the Georgia 24/7 guy. They've all put in their predictions. As we've seen, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen. We saw that with Kyle McCord, but there was also, I do think Kyle McCord would have happened if this Dylan Raiola thing didn't. I think that definitely threw a wrench into it. So as much as the people want to get, I saw like them ripping the crystal ball, like these guys don't know anything. And it's like, well, a lot of things have changed in the last 48 hours that weren't expected to be, when Kyle McCord came to this visit, like Dylan Raiola wasn't even on the radar. So I'll give those guys a pass. But in terms of, Matt Rule in Nebraska, it makes it, you've got to get, Dylan Raiola in the fold. And I mean, I know it is hard for freshman quarterbacks. There's been, like Dante Moore somewhat struggled, but Caleb Williams did it at Oklahoma. I mean, I think it was like the sixth or seventh game that he started, after Spencer Rattler kind of struggled. And that worked out really well for him. And it's very possible that Nebraska just, and I still think that Dylan's going to have to compete for the job with Chuba or whoever's here, obviously. But, if he flashes the talent and he can, take care of the football and do those things, like I see no reason why not to just roll with the kid. And there's going to be some bumps and bruises on the way, but I think he's got the talent level that's going to make it worthwhile. And if he can start figuring it out next year, that just puts you even further ahead of the eight ball going into 2025 and 2026.
And honestly, you swapped out one Elite 11 quarterback, Daniel Kalen, for another one in Dylan Raiola. So, I mean, it's not like you're necessarily downgrading here. And, it's not like you're necessarily in the Kyle McCord, case. It's not like, in my opinion, there's going to be a complete drop off in talent to the point where it seems like a major loss. It definitely stings for depth purposes, and I would have loved McCord, but it's not like we're getting a slouch with Raiola.
And like I said yesterday, with Daniel Kalen's visiting Michigan State, I don't know that it's 100% that he'll leave if Raiola joins the class, but probably. But the thing about it is that Michigan State, it's going to be, they've got Aiden Chiles, who is transferring there from Oregon State, and he's got 3 more years. So, Daniel's looking at sitting there for, at least, probably the same amount of time, because if everything goes well with Dylan Raiola, he's going to be heading to the NFL draft after the 2026 season. I mean, that's his goal. That's the goal of every, Caleb Williams type. They want to play 3 seasons and go to the draft. So, I mean, theoretically, Kalen could come here, redshirt, be the backup for 2 years, and still have 2 years to be the starter if he wanted to go that route, which probably is not going to be that dissimilar. If he goes to Michigan State, it's going to be a very similar deal. Redshirt for a year, sit for 2 years, unless Chiles is ready to go to the NFL draft in 2 years, which maybe he is. He's only, played like 9 games and has 4 touchdowns, but he's the number one transfer portal quarterback right now, if you guys aren't familiar with him. And so at any rate, like I understand, Kalen wanting to leave, but it's not like there's a slam dunk situation where he's like starting in a year or two at Michigan State either.
No, but I think, this is giving him a chance to explore his other options. And, he had, and from what I've seen, he hasn't technically decommitted. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, we do need depth in the quarterback room, and I just hope Raiola works out, because if Raiola, I don't know, doesn't commit or, something like that, then I think we're in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would, sign Kalen, and then it would be back to the transfer portal, which I still think they need to look at the transfer portal for a starter. That's my opinion. And I know that people have, Casey Thompson was in town yesterday, and I saw the, Brian Munson retweeted, his commitment from like 2022 or whatever last night. So that was kind of interesting. You know, I he I
And
don't I
go ahead.
just don't see that being a possible. I mean, for one, I don't know that he's healthy. He's not healthy yet. He's coming off an ACL tear, I believe, and then he's got to get the waiver first, and then we're right back to Chuba Purdy or Casey Thompson or Dylan Raiola. So I mean, I don't. Yeah, I'm not guaranteeing that they're going to add a quarterback in the portal. I think they'll probably look, but I don't know that they're going to find one that's like a clear upgrade over Chuba Purdy.
And people were, pointing out he was in the student directory and stuff like that. My name is still in my college's student directory, and I graduated 6 years ago, so don't be
Yeah,
fooled by that either.
yeah, and
But
they people had Adrian Martinez. Yeah, they somebody else made that point with like Adrian Martinez and other guys like that.
yeah.
That's been years. So yeah, that
Yeah,
doesn't
no,
mean
it takes them a
anything.
while. I think it takes any college a while to clear out any student directory names, but, I still have my college email actually too. But anyway, yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be interesting if things came full circle and somehow Casey Thompson was back on the roster? Kind of, making amends for the mistake that was Jeff Sims at the time. Hmm.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I think honestly, I think I would just go with Chuba. I mean, like for this year, just let him. I mean, I just don't see anybody out there in the portal that's going to fit what Nebraska really needs because Raiola's not going to, you're not going to bring in like a Malik Murphy, for instance, who just hit the portal yesterday because he's got 3 years of eligibility. So that puts him directly in conflict with Raiola. So you have to be really careful here. And that's the same thing with like Malik Murphy wants to play. That's why he's leaving Texas. So is he going to come to a program that just added a 5-star quarterback? No. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So that's where Nebraska's kind of in a bit of a tough spot. They're going to have to go get one of those, like a true veteran guy that probably isn't going to start, and that could be their best option. And maybe it's just rolling with Chuba and Heinrich Harburg at this point. That could be the best option too, because I mean, Chuba knows the system. He's going to be healthier next year. The guys around him, I think, are going to be better. And I mean, he did play terribly in the last 3 games. So hopefully he can develop a little bit more. And if Raiola's not ready, then he can kind of guide the ship until he is. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if they just, if Raiola shows enough ability to just be like, hey, we're just going to ride with you, and we're going to live with the bumps and bruises for the first year. But because I mean, if you think about it, like even if Dylan Raiola comes here and they like win 7 or 8 games, like even if they don't set the world on fire, but he has some moments, and then you have that momentum going forward. And then when you're going into the next year's transfer portal, not that rules said we're going to add a ton, but those few key playmakers, that they're going to want to come, like maybe a big time receiver or somebody that can help you get over the top. It's going to be a lot easier to sell those pieces coming here when you've got a quarterback that can take you to the playoff.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I think quarterback development is important. So I'd rather go through the development process, which is something we've been missing in previous, coaching regimes, than to, pull a kid because he had one bad game and then, um, you know, bench him for the rest of his career or whatever. And I understand that sounds like a lot of what Scott Frost did with Adrian Martinez, but I think Rule will do a better job of being able to assess if something's not working, or assess if Rayola may need some time to just get acclimated to things.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just I mean, he's played high level football for a lot of his. I mean, Buford, they're playing big time level football. So I mean, I feel like he should be fairly ready. I feel like he's definitely going to enroll early. He might take this trip and might just enroll. He might not leave Nebraska after he takes this visit. Because obviously, if his family's not going to be living in Georgia anymore. I don't think. I don't think that's like their permanent. I don't know their situation, but it seems like they, are going to be relocating if he's not going to Georgia. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be. They definitely have to get him. They've got to get Dylan Raiola, and then, I guess the other thing I was thinking about too is probably, in my mind, this probably means Nebraska's not getting Julian Fleming. That's just my opinion. I hope maybe that changes,
Yeah,
but
that's what I was thinking too, and that's what I kind of wrote last night. I mean, this puts Julian Fleming's future with Nebraska in doubt, which is kind of a bummer. But I mean, again, you're looking at landing a five-star quarterback. I mean, it's not so bad.
And Damon Demas tweeted like a corn cob last night, and he did tell Sean Callahan that he has been in contact with the coaching staff, so maybe they're going to circle back there. He's a former 5-star guy from played at Texas A&M, is at a JUCO right now, but is a dynamic guy, and it wasn't. I'm trying to think of what his criminal issue was, but the coach there at the JUCO college, says he's totally a great guy, and that you should not have any concerns about adding him to your program, basically. So that could open the door for him to be added back, and I do think that they'll try to, if they don't get Julian Fleming, they'll try to add somebody else in the transfer portal at that position.
And quite honestly, you have Malachi Coleman, Jalen Lloyd, and all these guys to try to help Dylan Raiola as well. I mean, that's not a bad group either. So there is talent on the roster, and then you talk about the guys coming in, McMorris and Hall and Carter Nelson. And I think this Raiola commitment doesn't affect that, but you have guys that are going to be able to help you. So it's not like Nebraska hasn't done enough on their end in terms of recruiting to get impact receivers. These next 2 years, in terms of just talent and recruiting ability at the tight end and wide receiver positions, I think are going to help Raiola a lot.
Yeah, in this class, Davon Hall, Isaiah McMorris, Quinn Clark, going back to even last year's class. I mean, Jaden Doss on top of Coleman and Lloyd. Bryce Turner's still out there. I mean, I
Demetrius
would,
Bell, who we didn't even see from last year's class.
yeah, Demetrius Bell. I mean, it wouldn't shock me, like, if I know Bryce Turner, they're talking about him on defense, but I mean, I think this spring will be interesting to see kind of where he winds up, because I think he could go either way.
Well, I
Um,
think the wide receiver playbook is kind of hard to learn a little bit, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's definitely true. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of how that shakes out. And then you got Fedoni at tight end, so um, yeah, I think there's a lot of talent on this offense. Just need to have the quarterback, and the defense is there. I really like Bly Hill, as I said, who's visiting this weekend for Nebraska. He's a freshman, but he had like a couple 2 or 3 interceptions at St. Francis. His dad played in the NFL. So I think he's going to be an interesting pickup. And if they can add him, he could potentially slot into that secondary. And because there's really only one major kind of position that needs to be filled. And the way I look at it, Nebraska could take a corner or a safety, because I think Malcolm Hartzog could play either spot. So if you got Tommy Hill at corner, you could have Malcolm Hartzog at nickel or corner. You've got Deshaun Singleton at safety, Isaac Gifford at safety. You got Marcus Buford at safety. So
Those two coming back, Buford because of health and having a full season, and Gifford just coming back for one more season is going to be absolutely huge for the defense.
yeah, so and then Singleton too, because he really was. I mean, he
Yeah,
was playing very well before he got injured. And then it'll be interesting to see what happens with Eric Fields, if they keep him at safety or drop him back down to linebacker.
they talked a
Um,
lot about him during preseason camp as a guy that's a big time playmaker. So I'm going to be interested to see what he does next year.
Yeah, and the safety position was just loaded, and they do need help at
Yeah,
linebacker. Although as I said, with Javin Wright and if John Bullock comes back, I don't think they're as bad off as some people believe that they are. They do need to add, I think, maybe a linebacker in the transfer portal, but you've also got guys like Dylan Rogers that
hmm
are ready to step up, and yeah, there's a lot of really good young talent on this defense too. So a lot of things to be excited about moving forward. Hopefully, we will get Dylan Raiola this weekend, you guys. The visit's expected to start tomorrow, so we will keep you up to date on
fingers
Husker.
crossed.
Yeah, on HuskerBigRed.com. If anything major happens, we will try to come back and have a video. But if not, we'll probably catch you back on Monday with another episode of our podcast. So thanks for all the support, you guys. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Check out HuskerBigRed.com. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.